The 1960s were meant to be Britain's golden age of luxury motoring. Walnut dashboards, leather that smelled of old money, and badges that promised prestige on every bonnet. Boardrooms across the country queued for British elegance. But behind the polish, something wasn't quite right. Some of these cars looked magnificent in the showroom and fell apart on the road. Others carried famous names that simply couldn't deliver. Today on Britain Rewind, we're counting down 10 luxury cars that promised the world and quietly let Britain down. And the car at number 1 still divides opinion decades later. Number 10. Austin Westminster A110. The Austin Westminster A110 arrived in 1961 wearing the clothes of a proper executive saloon. Long bonnet, chrome grille, a 2.9-litre straight-six under the hood, and leather seats that suggested serious ambition. On paper, it looked like Austin's answer to Rover and Jaguar. But appearances can be deceiving. The A110 never quite shed the feeling of being a family car dressed up for a formal occasion. Its underpinnings traced back to more modest BMC saloons, and drivers who expected genuine refinement often found the ride wallowy and the handling vague at speed. Few buyers expected what came next. Sales never threatened Jaguar's territory, and the car became something of a civil servant's compromise rather than a true status symbol. Would buyers notice the difference between borrowed luxury and the real thing? Many did. The Westminster faded quietly by the decade's end, remembered less for glamour and more for what it almost achieved. The next car made an even bigger promise and broke it in a different way. Number 9. Wolseley 6110. The Wolseley 6110 carried one of Britain's most distinguished badges into the 1960s, complete with its illuminated grille emblem that glowed at night like a small piece of theatre. Underneath, it shared its bones with the Austin Westminster, fitted with the same 2.9-litre six-cylinder engine and BMC running gear. That wasn't even its biggest weakness. The problem was identity. Wolseley had once meant something distinct: police cars, dignified saloons, a badge with its own character. By the early 60s, that character had been diluted into badge engineering, with Wolseley, Austin, and Riley versions of essentially the same car sold side by side. Do you remember seeing one of these on the road? Buyers who paid extra for the Wolseley name often struggled to explain what they were actually getting for their money. Production quietly wound down as the decade progressed. It was a graceful car wearing a hollowed-out heritage, and that contradiction never quite left it. The next entry aimed even higher and stumbled even harder. Number 8. Riley 472. The Riley 472 promised the sporting pedigree the Riley name had built since the 1930s. Twin fuel tanks, a leather-trimmed cabin, and styling borrowed from the Farina design house gave it real showroom appeal in 1961. The real surprise was still hidden. Beneath the elegant panels sat mechanicals shared almost entirely with the Wolseley and MG versions of the same platform, leaving little of the sporting DNA Riley enthusiasts had actually paid for. Have you ever ridden in one? Owners often discovered a car that looked distinguished but drove like any other BMC saloon of the era, without the crisp responses older Rileys were known for. That wasn't the biggest problem either. Rust proved relentless on these bodies, and few survived long enough to build a lasting reputation. The badge suggested craftsmanship and character. The car underneath suggested compromise. As British Leyland loomed on the horizon, Riley's identity was already fading fast, and the next car's failure was far more public. Number 7. Humber Super Snipe Series 5. The Humber Super Snipe Series 5 entered the decade as one of Roots Group's flagship saloons, built for company chairmen and government officials who wanted quiet authority rather than flash. Its 2.9-litre six offered relaxed cruising, and the cabin felt genuinely substantial. But that wasn't its biggest weakness. Reliability became the recurring complaint. Electrical gremlins and cooling issues surfaced often enough that fleet buyers grew cautious, and cautious fleet buyers talked to each other. The final entry explains why so many collectors still argue today, but this one had its own quiet tragedy. Despite genuine comfort and presence on the road, the Super Snipe struggled against Jaguar and Rover models that simply felt more dependable for similar money. Would you have chosen it over its rivals? Many buyers didn't. Production ended in 1967 as routes fell under Chrysler's control, and a once proud badge disappeared from Britain's roads within a few short years. What happened to the next car was even harder to watch. Number 6. Austin 3 Litre. Launched in 1968, the Austin 3 Litre should have been British Leyland's answer to Rover and Triumph's executive saloons. It carried a smooth 6-cylinder engine, hydroelastic suspension for a genuinely comfortable ride, and generous space inside. But another British manufacturer would make an even bigger mistake with styling. The 3 Litre's front end borrowed heavily from the smaller Austin 1800, giving a flagship car the face of a mid-range family saloon. Buyers noticed immediately. Combined with a body that felt heavier than its performance justified, the 3 Litre never built the prestige image British Leyland had hoped for. Its worst flaw wasn't obvious at first, it only became clear once buyers compared it directly against the crisper, better-resolved Rover P6. Sales were modest at best, and production limped along until 1971. Today it's remembered as a car of genuinely good engineering wrapped in genuinely poor presentation. The next entry took disappointment to another level entirely. Number 5. Daimler Majestic Major. The Daimler Majestic Major arrived in 1961 with a formidable 4.5-litre V8 offering serious performance for a car of its size and comfort. On paper, this was Daimler doing exactly what Daimler did best. But the real surprise was still hidden beneath the surface. Just a year earlier, Daimler had been absorbed by Jaguar, and the Majestic Major effectively competed against Jaguar's own Mark X for the same wealthy customers. That's an awkward position for any flagship to be in. The next entry took disappointment to another level, but this one suffered quietly from corporate politics rather than engineering faults. Despite genuine refinement and effortless power, the Majestic Major sold in modest numbers, overshadowed by its new sister company's marketing muscle. Do you remember seeing one of these on British roads? Very few people do. Production ended in 1968, and a genuinely excellent car became a footnote in Daimler's slow absorption into the Jaguar empire. What came next divided opinion even more sharply. Number 4. Rover P5B 3.5 Litre. The Rover P5B arrived in 1967 with a 3.5-litre BIC-derived V8 that transformed the older P5's character, giving it genuine effortless pace to match its distinguished looks. Government ministers and business leaders loved its understated presence. But appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the elegant coachwork sat a heavy body structure that blunted the new engine's potential, and fuel consumption proved genuinely painful for the era's rising petrol prices. The answer came surprisingly quickly for buyers weighing running costs against prestige. Many chose rivals instead. Complex electrical systems and a cramped boot didn't help matters, undermining a car that otherwise felt genuinely special from behind the wheel. Would you have bought one over a Jaguar of similar money? It's a fair question, and contemporary buyers often answered no. Still, the P5B carved out a loyal following among those who valued dignity over outright speed. The next car's disappointment was far less forgivable, and far more public. Number 3. Jaguar Mark X. The Jaguar Mark X launched in 1961 as the company's most ambitious flagship yet, built primarily to conquer the American market with sheer size and presence. Its 3.8-litre, later 4.2-litre, straight-six engine delivered genuine performance, and reviewers praised its ride quality and near-silent cabin. Few buyers expected what came next. The Mark X proved simply too wide for European roads and too unusual in proportion for American tastes, undermining the very market it was built to win. Jaguar's own chairman later admitted the car had grown too large. That wasn't even its biggest weakness. Production delays and worker disputes during its critical launch year damaged early impressions permanently. What happened afterwards changed everything for Jaguar's flagship ambitions. Despite genuine engineering merit, the Mark X never achieved the sales figures Jaguar had promised investors and dealers alike. It remains one of the most handsome disappointments in British motoring history. But the next entry's failure struck even closer to home. Number 2. Rover P6 3500. The Rover P6 3500, launched in 1968, combined cutting-edge unitary construction with a genuinely powerful X-big V8 engine, and critics initially loved its blend of technology and pace. This was Rover doing something bold. But that wasn't its biggest problem. The P6's advanced engineering, including its complex Dion rear suspension and unusual base unit construction, proved genuinely difficult and expensive to maintain, frustrating owners who expected Rover's traditional reliability. The real surprise was still hidden in the workshop bills. Combined with a premium price that priced out many loyal Rover buyers, the 3500 struggled to compete directly against the newly launched Jaguar XJ6, which offered comparable performance with greater refinement. You'll definitely want to stay for number 1 after this. Despite its genuine technical achievements, the P6 3500 remains admired mainly by a small circle of enthusiasts rather than the wider public it was designed to win over. Its ambition, in the end, outran its practicality. Number 1. Vanden Plas Princess for Litre R. Nothing on this list disappointed quite like the Vanden Plas Princess for Litre R. Launched in 1964, it promised something no other British car of the era could: a genuine Rolls-Royce engine, a 3.9-litre straight-six borrowed from military applications, delivering effortless power and real snob appeal. Early demand surged. Buyers queued expecting near Rolls-Royce refinement wrapped in Vanden Plas craftsmanship. The final story explains why so many collectors still argue today. Because underneath that celebrated engine sat a bodyshell essentially unchanged from the humbler Austin and Wolseley Farina saloons it was based on. The magnificent power unit was, quite literally, wasted on the rest of the car. Reliability problems, particularly serious engine overheating, soon followed, and word spread quickly among Britain's status-conscious buyers. Sales collapsed from over 100 cars a week to barely 200 a year by 1967. It was withdrawn in 1968, a genuinely brilliant engine, trapped inside a car that never deserved it. Hollow prestige, dressed up as glory. 10 cars, 10 British badges, and 10 reminders that prestige alone never guaranteed greatness. From Wolseley's borrowed identity to the Princess RS hollow promise, these were cars built on ambition that outran engineering, or engineering that outran common sense. Which one surprised you most? Which would you have driven proudly, and which would you have quietly returned? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If you enjoyed uncovering these forgotten stories, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more from Britain Rewind. Until next time, keep the memories running, and the engines turning.